This week on Arizona Illustrated, the Mexican gray wolf in Arizona. Ina or Ina, Houghton or Houghton, what's in a street name? The secrets of successful aging, and old Tucson on fire from the vault. Hello, and welcome to Arizona Illustrated. I'm Tom McNamara. By the mid-1900s, the Mexican gray wolf, a native species to Arizona, had been effectively eliminated from the United States. Reintroduction of the animal was initiated in March of 1998. Now, the project is a cooperative effort between the Arizona Game and Fish Department, White Mountain Apache Tribe, and United States Forest, Animal and Plant Health Inspection, and Fish and Wildlife Services. The goal at its inception was to reestablish a viable, self-sustaining population of at least 100 wolves, a goal surpassed in early 2015, but one that is still highly complex and often controversial.
One of the things that I think is important to consider is there is no one single communal view of wolves.
The ecological role they play provides benefits throughout the system, and wolves were eradicated almost to the point of extinction.
In reality, when you have wolves, there is not coexistence. Something will live and something will die.
You think you get two extreme sides and you have a plan and what you throw up, and it all comes down in the middle between those two perspectives, and nobody's really happy with it.
We're in the business of producing a quality product for consumers. Come on, Mom. One day, I walked out of the house right there where we were, right there in that rock garden. Right there on my porch, I walked out, and there sat 3 wolves, right there. The presence of the wolf is pitting people against people.
We need to start back with the arrival of Europeans to Arizona. They came primarily to gather wildlife. They were trappers.
Wolves were eradicated for a variety of reasons, including competition for wild prey and livestock. They didn't have the ecological understanding to know how to deal with the drought or how to manage grasslands, but they could do something about wolves, and they did. First, it was a private campaign to eradicate wolves based on trapping and poisons, eventually hiring professional trappers, and that evolved into a federal program to eliminate wolves.
The removal started in the 20s and 30s, and then it was a progression till the early 1960s when wolves were essentially eliminated from the wild. We had a few in captivity, and then there was some work done in Mexico, found a few wolves remaining there. Those wolves were captured to bring the total that went into the captive breeding program of 7. Those wolves formed the nucleus for the release, that first release to the wild that occurred in 1998 when 11 wolves were released in the Blue Range area.
The department's very firm on where their stance is, in regards to this project. We want to manage wildlife. That's our job, that's our duty as the Game and Fish Agency in this state. We look at the science and what we have in the best available science to date to look at what the future might hold for an increased population of wolves in this state. Every place isn't like a Yellowstone or a national park where you can just let it go. We work and live here in a national forest, and national forest is multiple use land. It's somebody that lives in Phoenix property just as much as someone that lives up here. And so you'll have these differing ideas on how you manage those natural resources.
Right now in the Blue Range, we're relatively saturated. We're seeing wolf packs bump up against each other, so we had to open additional areas.
The next several years, releases will be allowed to occur in this initial zone. After a period of time, the next zone will be eligible for releases. And essentially, wolves will be allowed to roam south of Interstate 40 down to the international boundary.
Most of the ranchers that I know pretty much accepted the idea that we would have a limited number of wolves because we thought we could work out how we could live within the realms of that number. But I have not been able to figure out how I can coexist with wolves when wolves are killing the very animal that sustains me and allows me to stay on that land. We're looking at a site where we've had three depredations. I'd seen 3 wolves just about a half a mile across the highway here, and then in about 1 hour we came back in to check these cattle and found 1 dead one, 1 wounded.
One of the issues that people have is when you lose a calf, you've suffered an economic loss. The Fish and Wildlife Service and the livestock industry worked together and developed the Coexistence Council, which is a program that they can seek compensation for their losses.
The idea of a depredation payment is better than nothing, but it doesn't take into all the costs that come with that depredation.
So we developed model language that was introduced in the Arizona legislature in 2014. The bill was passed and very recently signed by Governor Ducey that will establish a new approach to livestock compensation. We think that holds big promise to build a more active compensation program that will actually be funded at the level to be meaningful.
While there are many tools and techniques and programs that can help reduce conflicts and potentially even turn wolves from a liability into an asset, there's no silver bullet that's going to work in every situation to prevent wolf livestock conflicts or to convert people who firmly disagree with wolf restoration into wolf supporters. But there is hope, and the hope is that ranchers and conservationists and outfitters and guides and wildlife managers have a lot in common. In fact, I would argue we have more in common than we disagree on.
For more on the Mexican gray wolf and other natural resource topics, visit globalrangelands.org, Mexican wolf. Streets are named for a variety of reasons, most unremarkable, words that sound enchanting or pleasant or geographically appropriate. Then there are the streets that reflect a direct history to a place or a person. In Tucson, there are many streets we drive on every day without a thought as to the origin of its name. In our next story, we team up with David Layton of the Arizona Daily Star to analyze the history and the reasons behind the names of some of Tucson's busiest streets.
You're hearing the program here on listener-supported NPR 89.1, where it's 19 minutes past 4 o'clock. Let's look at Tucson area traffic once again. Tanque Road at Wentworth Road is closed this afternoon due to flooding. As an alternative, use Houghton Road. Pronouncing words appropriately, that's part of my job. An essential part of how we communicate is to get it right. And getting it right means we do our best to say things the way they are intended to be said.
The whole dilemma about word pronunciation on radio and television is an interesting one. And when it comes to proper names in the Tucson area, there's a lot of controversy about it.
My name's David Layton. I'm a freelance journalist for the Arizona Daily Star newspaper, and I write a column called Street Smarts, where I study the origin of street names in Tucson. Prior to about 1950, a lot of the streets in Tucson do have history. After 1950, you got a lot of developers coming in from Phoenix, California, and they're just naming streets anything.
The English language and all languages are fluid. They change, they evolve, pronunciations change. It's really important for us to recognize that, but at the same time, have some standards that we can bear out.
Plumber.
Plumer.
Plumber.
Plumber.
Plumber?
I pronounce it plumber.
My daughter, she lived on Plumer for a while, and every time I would drive past there, I would say, that looks like Plumer to me. And then I started asking folks and realized that most folks in Tucson say plumber.
Plumber, named after a guy named Nathaniel Plummer, who was the president of the Southern Arizona Bank. He was a prominent land developer. Nathaniel E. Plummer is how they pronounced it. Again, if you talk to the old timers who've been here for a long, long time, they'll all tell you it's Plummer.
Houghton.
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 And we do here at Arizona Public Media go with the family's preferred pronunciation, which is Houghton.
Boy, I'm not sure I've ever heard that.
We say Houghton because the family, the Houghton family, which is a member of the Tucson community for, I guess, a long time, says their name as Houghton. We respect their wishes and say their name the way they would say it, even though I know a lot of people around town say it in different ways.
How it became Houghton, I'm not really sure, but it's definitely Houghton. The name is actually derived from homesteaders William and Florence Houghton. They did homestead 640 acres out in the area, and Houghton Road was the western boundary of their homestead. And their home supposedly was located where Old Spanish Trail and Houghton meet. It was a tough life, even back in the late 1920s, 1930s, having to dig wells and stuff like that. They were somewhat pioneers themselves. And I think it's important, since these streets do honor people, that we pronounce them correctly.
We are on the side of pronouncing it the way the family has told us it is pronounced. Now, then we come to an exception to that. And this one's a dilemma, I admit.
Ina.
Ina. Anna.
Ina.
Ina.
It's always been Ina as long as I've been here.
The road that everyone calls Ina is correctly pronounced Ina. Its name derives from a woman named Ina Giddings. She was the first female director of the physical education department for women at the University of Arizona. She also had a homestead out there, and as a result of that, this street was named in her honor.
Ina Giddings is an icon around the University of Arizona, especially for those of us that have been involved in sports and activity and fitness all of our lives. We heard she was a fireball, and she had lots of thoughts and ideas about the future of particularly of women in athletics. When physical education first started for women at the university, in the catalog it said that their purpose was for poise, grace, and carriage. And so literally there are photos of women walking around with broomsticks on their heads and things like that. And she took that from poise, grace, and carriage to an actual like fitness and an activity level, introducing basically intramurals here on campus. The new generation, of course, is always looking forward rather than looking back, but we try to make sure that the historical, perspective is still there.
Well, yeah, I mean, have you ever heard anybody in Tucson say Ina Road? I never have, not even once. I guess it's just one of those quirky things that's accepted among our population here that, yeah, it's Ina, even though we know it's Ina.
I think if we said at this stage Ina Road, people would perhaps not know what we're talking about. It's a dilemma because it's been pronounced Ina as long as I can remember, and I was born and raised in Tucson. What to do about that dilemma, I don't know. Maybe we should ask our viewers and listeners to weigh in on it and decide if we should pronounce it the way Ina Giddings originally pronounced her name.
It was pronounced as Ina. And then later on I heard that it was named after someone named Ina. And I said, yeah, but we don't say that.
I'd have to consciously think to say Ina, and if I did, everybody would correct me and tell me that I'm saying it wrong.
You know, I try to do my part. When I'm on campus, when I refer to her, I refer to it as Ina Road as opposed to Ina Road, and try to explain the historical significance of that, but it just doesn't seem to catch on.
She actually, in several newspaper articles, would write to the Arizona Daily Star, Tucson Citizen, and saying this is how it's pronounced. People are pronouncing correctly. She had a long fight. It doesn't look like she won the fight, but it is Ina Road for Ina Giddings.
Tucson.
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 Sometimes they say Tucson, but I say Tucson.
The name Tucson is derived from the Native American word Tucson, which means loosely translated as water at the bottom of the Black Mountain, because there was water that ran at the bottom of what's now called a mountain. It's a slight modification from Tucson to Tucson to Tucson. And I think that it naturally happens in all groups of people in all places. Who knows, maybe the Native Americans weren't very agreeable to the idea of calling it Tucson instead of Tucson, but that's many hundreds of years past, so it's difficult to say.
Like what you see on Arizona Illustrated? Visit our webpage at azpm.org to watch and share videos from this episode. You'll also find stories from future programs, an easy way to submit your own story idea, an archive of past episodes of Arizona Illustrated, and you'll find everything you need to stay connected with public broadcasting in Southern Arizona. azpm.org. The number of Americans aged 65 and over has increased by about 25% since 2003, and it's projected to more than double by 2060. With these growing numbers comes a growing interest in learning what it takes to age well.
Just a drop of water, and it never talks back to you. That's what I like about it. If you're taking pictures of people, they talk back. Is my hair just right? Am I posed right? Which is my better side? Water never says anything. It keeps quiet and drops. I was always interested in photography. I've probably taken pictures longer, I've taken more pictures than anybody in the whole world. After all, I'll be 102, and I started taking pictures at the age of 8. That makes 94 years of picture taking. That's a lot of pictures in a long time.
After a century, Irving Olson is still learning new tricks. He uses the latest technology to capture nature's tiniest details, from the shape of a water drop to an insect's gaze.
Nature needs me. It can't operate without me. It would never get publicity. I love difficult pictures like this one here.
And just as he's found a formula for his photographs, he's also developed a formula for living as long as he has.
It's a 3-part formula. It's very simple. If you count to 3, you can live to 100. First part of the formula, 50%. You have to have the right spouse. If you have the right spouse, you're halfway there. 45%, everything in moderation. You don't sleep too much, don't eat too much. Do everything just exactly right. Now, there's 5% less if you've been following me. That 5% is very difficult. For me, it's easy. Would you like to know what it is? I thought you'd never ask. Anyway, I'll tell you what it is. You do not, under any circumstances, take any crap from anyone.
At the University of Arizona and elsewhere, researchers are interested in Irving's formula, and Irving himself. They're studying the oldest people among us to learn the secrets of successful aging.
People who are able to maintain high levels of cognitive ability as they age throughout the course of their lifespan can be considered as having achieved successful aging. It's really being able to maintain how you functioned all your life as you age, and not having major changes or declines in your cognitive ability as some people can experience. Looking at successful aging, we're really trying to understand why some people are able to do really well as they age and others not.
Genes play an important role, but researchers are learning that other factors may matter just as much. Staying active, eating well, and sleeping enough have all been associated with longer, healthier lives. What may matter most is something that's hard to measure: how we engage with the world.
There are some good associational studies that have shown that being engaged, being socially connected is beneficial to your cognitive health and your outcome over life. It goes hand in hand with your cognitive health, is to be emotionally engaged and happy and feeling fulfilled. And those kinds of aspects are just as important in terms of experiencing a good, successful quality of life as you age. It's projected that the elderly community will double over the next several decades. So this is going to become an increasingly important issue, that we understand what are the benefits and what are the causes of difficulties as we age, because there are going to be more and more people who are going to be experiencing these problems. So it's not only a problem for the individual or the family or the community, but it's also a huge public health issue.
Let's say thanks for redoing our webpage.
Activist Marian Lupu has always believed that this public health issue demands public action. Almost 50 years ago, she founded the organization that would become the Pima Council on Aging, to give more people a chance to age successfully.
When I started, our only service was one nursing home in the community. Most of the social agencies did not serve the elderly.
Since then, Marian has seen services grow and attitudes change, but she still recognizes societal obstacles to aging well.
In some cultures, aging has a much more reverence than we do here. And I don't know that reverence for the elderly really is as important as just teaching people at a very early age that there will be disabilities and how they overcome them. If we could develop relationships with young people for them to recognize that they will grow old, and what do they want in the community to be there when they are old, and what is it that we need to put in the society that are supports.
Now 90 years old, Marian has her own definition of successful aging.
To me, success is not wishing that you wouldn't be here tomorrow morning, that you would just close your eyes and go away. To me, successful aging is for the person to enjoy the latter stages of their life. And of course, that means, from my perspective solely, is that you have to find what it is that gives you kicks.
Irving Olson has no doubt about what gives him kicks, and no plans to stop searching for the next thing that makes his life worth living.
Now, since it's so hard to get around, I can't walk all day like I used to. Now it's simple. I just stand over a tray of water, drop water in, and I've got pictures. That's my latest thing. Next year, I hope to have a new kind of hobby going. I haven't picked it yet, but I'll have something new.
Old Tucson, the movie studio and theme park just west of Tucson, was made famous as a location for more than 300 movies and TV shows, beginning in 1939 with the movie Arizona. John Wayne, Kirk Douglas, Clint Eastwood, Elizabeth Taylor, Paul Newman, Sharon Stone, and Will Smith, just a few of the movie stars to walk its streets. Now, on April 24th of 1995, nearly half of the set, including many of the most famous wood structures, were destroyed by fire. A week later, Arizona Illustrated crews filed a report, which we share with you now from the vault.
When you first walk into Old Tucson, it's almost as though nothing has changed. But then the evidence of last week's devastating fire begins to come into focus.
The Golden Nugget stood right here. We used it as a an ice cream parlor and restaurant, but it dates back to several John Wayne movies. Remember the McClintock? It was the McClintock Hotel. It was the hotel in Rio Bravo, another John Wayne film. So that's gone.
So how much history was lost right here?
Lots.
I know, yeah.
I mean, movie history, you know, and particularly if we go into Mexican Plaza, probably the most photographed area in the park, constantly. And again, it goes from 1939 all the way up to the present. It was used, you know, Tombstone used the front of it for the opening scenes in Tombstone, and then it goes clear back again to 39. So you can look at a lot of movies and see the Mission and Golden Gate Mountain up there kind of go hand in hand, and that's an identifying point of was the film actually done at Old Tucson or not.
Estimates vary depending on who you ask and what they are basing it on, but the official Old Tucson estimate is that 40% of the park and studio were lost in the fire last week.
Look at the Reno. That's what's devastating to me. Every time I look at that, it looks like a monument set there or something. Now that's really got history. That goes clear to the 1870s.
Been in lots of movies.
Lots of movies. That's really a shame. I know they have had lots of...
Thank you for joining us here on Arizona Illustrated. Next week, a glimpse at the Tucson Museum of Art 2015 Arizona Biennial, remembering Mookie Singh, and the power of words. I'm Tom McNamara. See you next week.